trying to get a judge.
Exactly.
Yeah, we
Kids
need
or
somebody
do
to
whatever.
understand our worries and our
Right.
concerns, and that is a difficult thing, because I have to tell you, as a worker, once I've established a relationship with a parent,
Oh, it's
I really prepare them for, now we're gonna go to court, we've been working together about 20 days by now, and you're not gonna like what I have to say, but it's my responsibility to tell the judge why we got involved in the first place, and I need you to know that I have to say that out loud, and you're probably gonna be mad at me, and that's okay. We're gonna start again.
but prefacing it is huge. And
More
then
now.
knowing when we walk into that room, all my dirty laundry is out. I mean,
Theirs,
everything.
not yours.
Or
We
sorry,
don't wanna
yes.
know yours.
Well, I'm in their
I'm
thought
kidding.
process, but they, and I think that's the rebuilding. That's the coming to terms, and a judge has decided that based on these things, we need to be involved.
So, as I'm looking at the clock, I just wanna say, I'm gonna page through each thing and just like do a quick,
Okay.
anything we missed. It won't take me long, and please stop me if you have a question. I just wanna say probably that I wanna point out so that you realize we have covered this, because you're taking this, and please, if you have questions, don't feel, Bill can certainly answer questions, but he can also give you our information if you had a question about something and wanted to ask. I'm happy to talk with people.
If you have a caregiver that's an aunt or a grandmother, let's say, and okay, let's say grandmother and the grandchildren go over there. If the children go out of the home on their own and, to play with kids, and then go into other people's homes, and the grandmother or the aunt don't know where they're at, or they're found in the middle of a busy street, and they're like
Lack
5 or 4.
Lack of supervision,
So,
physical neglect.
okay.
If there's not some reason for it, like a legitimate reason. Okay, you know what? I had a really bad allergy attack, and I took my Benadryl, and I didn't realize it was gonna knock me out, and the next thing I knew, the 3-year-old was gone, and the cops were knocking on the door. Okay, now as a CPS worker, I'm not gonna substantiate abuse or neglect necessarily against that mother. If this is the 5th time that Johnny's made the Great Escape, by time 2 we're talking, can we get alarms, on the door so that you hear when it goes off, or is there an issue going on? What's happening here? That's what I'm talking about. It's a symptom, right? Does mom work graves and she doesn't have childcare? Were they just visiting and he made the Great Escape? We all understand developmentally kids make the Great Escape. Or I said stay in the yard, and literally a second ago you were there, and then I looked again and you weren't, and I didn't know where you were. I mean, that's also the thing. Is somebody actively noticing the child's missing and looking for them, and yet they've made it, a mile down the road, and now somebody else has them, and nobody knows who they are, and the cops have come? I mean, those things happen a lot, but it's just a matter of how accountable depends on what was happening that caused it to happen, and is it going to keep
The
happening?
circumstances.
Yeah,
you look at
what's-
all of that.
Exactly, all of it. So with neglect, we covered all of that. Neglect is difficult. You can't see neglect, usually. I mean, yes, once you get to the point where they're, the failure to thrive we talked about, well, then that's a physical manifestation if it's caused. But on this first page 4, it just gives you some info about poverty. Does not equal neglect. We've talked about that. We also want to look at what kind of things are happening in the home. Is the child receiving those basic needs and care? There's behavioral indicators, and there's a list for you there. Schools are usually the ones that notice these behavioral indicators in kids who are potentially being neglected. They're always hungry, or they're dirty, or whatnot. So there's that opportunity to do a little investigation and find out if that referral comes in. Okay, why is this happening, and what can we maybe do to mitigate that? Absence, so that's the abandonment stuff. We've already talked about that. Dental neglect, that's what I was saying with regard to bottle rot and decayed teeth. Poverty leads to that, in unrealistic developmental expectations about a baby holding their own bottle or them propping a bottle. Those are all things where we do education. Our role at CPS really is a ton of education, right? Like I said before, parents, when you know better, hopefully you're going to do better. We got to give them that opportunity. So if they can get dental care and just have not, then we're going to start really looking at that. If the issue is we got to get them services, then we're going to plug them into services. Okay? We're going to talk with them about not putting a baby down with a bottle in their mouth because the sugar pools and rots their teeth. We're going to talk about, you don't give them pop or full sugar juice, or those same kind of conversations that the WIC nurse is gonna have with them, the same conversations that the pediatrician's gonna have with them. But then we have to start looking at, is this something that can be mitigated, and are they just not caring? You know, then that's a whole different ballgame. Dirty homes are so fun because everyone has their own idea, right, of what constitutes a dirty home. And so you'll have a referral where somebody will call in and go, oh my God, you've got to go see that house. And you know, sometimes when you get out there, you're right, it's oh my God. But is it a safety hazard?
That's the key. It's
That's
gonna be
the
a
key.
safety
It has
hazard.
to be impacting the safety of the child. So, dirty house where there's animal feces on the floor, or dirty rotted food, or cords that can be pulled and a kid can have a TV or a computer or a something topple on top of them, knives, weapons, exposed wiring, all the things that are truly hazardous, that's a worry and a concern. Certainly, the same hazards for a 3-year-old are not the same for a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old might want to say, you know, you can pick up some stuff too here. Let's be working on the family unit and what's going on here. The other thing with messy homes is often there's contributing factors, right? What's going on behind the scenes that's making this house be unmanageable? Does mom have a mental health issue? Is she depressed? Is dad an alcoholic and doesn't care? I mean, there's many things that cause somebody's house to become dirty and brings them to Erika's attention. I don't have to go into dirty houses anymore, except my own, right? That one's there waiting for me tonight, I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff that happens that causes that. And usually people are overwhelmed. Sometimes they just have a different standard of living. If you're raised in that and it's not a big deal to you, then it's not a big deal necessarily. Laundry in the laundry room stacked to here doesn't mean the kids aren't safe.
No.
Okay?
Hoarding is,
And hoarding is
well,
huge.
what I
Shocking how many hoarders are in Helena, Montana.
and what I've really appreciated is the TV series, so now that we can label ourselves and we have an excuse not to
Ourselves.
deal with it.
Listen to her.
Ourselves?
We haven't been to Erika's house
I
yet.
try not to separate. No, but it's really, it's hard going in and saying this is hoarding, you know, and when it's bags of food. When it's bags of cans of food.
Or clothes.
Or clothes.
Someone's donated
or
a bunch of clothes and now it's just unmanageable. I brought
bags
home
of
these
boxes.
bags of clothes and
Yeah.
we picked out of them and now they're just everywhere. And
It's,
that
I mean,
happens a lot. There are no words, let's just say that. But our assessment, if you have a kid that's in care based on dirty house, no, it was a safety issue.
yeah,
We
it
don't
is
take
not.
kids out of houses just because they're dirty. Many of us were raised in households that weren't meticulous. Right?
So part of their treatment plan might be to figure out how to get that house a little
Sanitary.
safer.
Well, and here's the
How
other
can-
thing.
Yeah, sanitation is more the issue there.
It
What can
is.
we bring it up to the level where it's minimum standard of care and it's okay?
Yeah.
What's
I
a
mean,
good enough, clean enough house?
What if their trailer has not all sealed up and there's mold? I mean, it's not as a direct result of their caregiving abilities, but look, your place has mold and it's not safe, you know? I mean, you don't want your kid, but then where do you, and so not all of these circumstances are we going in and removing that kid. If they don't have a support system, there's other ways that we can do things, but typically, where can they go for a week or two or however long this takes to get this?
Get rid of that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, does grandma live in the, I mean, we don't wanna do stranger foster care, so that's an opportunity to say to a parent, all right, this looks like you're gonna need a couple days for us to talk about it. But here's the other thing, if the education doesn't happen and we don't look at the symptoms of why is the house dirty, is it just that I don't know how to keep a house? I'm young, I'm overwhelmed, it's me and my kiddo, I'm working, doing the best I can, my house is just getting ahead of me. Well, that's a whole different circumstance than cat feces and no understanding that the molded food in the refrigerator is a health hazard if the little person decides they're going to eat it, okay? So dirty house, if you have people that you get that the kid's been removed and it's because only dirty house stuff, that's because it's pretty atrocious and it's a safety hazard, okay? Drowning and near drowning, that falls under neglect because if a kiddo drowns or nearly drowns, we really have to figure out with supervision an issue, okay? So that's a piece that'll come to our table. Drug-exposed infants, so positive toxicology at birth. In Montana anyway, doctors don't screen for toxicology on infants unless they have a reason to believe that they're drug affected. I mean, you don't stand, it's not across the board that every baby born is tested. I mean, I think financially it's prohibitive, and really it's just not necessary. But if mom's clearly drug affected, or dad that comes is clearly drug affected, or the baby's born and is clearly drug affected, then they're gonna do a screen. Or if we would call and say, we've had reports that mom's been using while she's pregnant, or she's always at the bar and she's pregnant, and unborn doesn't fall in our jurisdiction. An unborn is not a child in Montana under child protection statutes. So during pregnancy, we cannot hold a mother accountable, and neither can the criminal.
You have to wait till that child is born.
Child has to be born.
Absolutely, and I have to say, even when, this is remarkable to me, but I'm here to tell you that even when they come in, drug affected parents delivering, they don't always test. They don't always test, and
depending on what they test positive for is going to change what our response is going to be. THC in this community, they're not going to do anything to a mom who tests positive for THC and a baby tests positive because in utero they were exposed. That's not something they're gonna. You don't have the medical evidence to support that it is medically not okay for the child. It's harmful to them. Meth is a different ballgame, of course. Opiates, different, barbiturate type things are going to be different for what happens to a kiddo. Now, we're certainly not telling you that it's okay to be using in utero, but the reality is we're pretty limited in what we can do. And then there's the other issues. Let's go these real fast. Licensed scabies, chronic. Okay, parents are not being neglectful, and it's not considered neglect when kids get lice. Children get lice.
There's always cases of lice.
Well, everybody has lice, right?
The most wealthy kid in school can get lice,
Yeah.
and scabies for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean, they honestly can, and it's certainly not a result of your living environment. It can be, but it's not a
necessarily
direct correlation.
And we're going to try to get them hooked up with in-home services or a health nurse to try to rectify that. And school nurses are awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lice is
Their
miserable to
hearts.
get rid of, though. It is absolutely
It's hard.
horrible to get rid of. And so if you're really combing through your entire house, I can't imagine.
yeah. And then think of that too, right? The kiddo brings home lice, but now, if I don't have a lot of money and I can't afford to take everything to the laundry and wash it in hot and dry it on high or bag it all up and throw it in a freezer or leave it in a bag for however long. I mean, the reality is poverty can contribute to the ongoing impact of lice too, just because the remedies are not available, right?
And lice treatment's expensive, I'm here to tell you. I've bought a few. Not for myself, but I have bought.
And the health department can help with that if people have to. Cetaphil too. Cetaphil
Ooh,
kills lice, and it isn't toxic.
no
So,
kidding?
put it in their little hair, put a little cap
The
on
lotion?
them.
The pink
Cetaphil.
stuff?
No, no.
It's white, it's in like a.
Cetaphil, it's a
Oh,
lotion or a
Cetaphil.
moisturizer
Oh, okay.
that will kill lice.
Tea tree oil as well.
Yes.
They hate tea
So,
tree.
tea tree, it's a Melaleuca product.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about medical neglect, we talked about psychological neglect, supervision's a kicker. There's no legal age in Montana for when kids can be left home alone. I usually use 12 with my parents as a guideline for, or 11, excuse me. If you're 11, you can take safe sitters. So if at 11, I'm old enough developmentally to become a babysitter for someone else's child, then probably I'm okay to be home by myself for a while, right? But then you start looking at, well, how long are they home alone? 8, 9, 10, depends on the kid, right? Some children at 6, 7, 8 could probably be left home for a short amount of time. Do they have a plan? Do they feel fear? There's a lot of things that we assess. So kids being left alone, just by definition of being alone after school, lots of us were latchkey kids. I was home alone in kindergarten for a while after school and in the mornings, I lived in a small town and clearly that didn't become an issue, but now we would be getting calls if somebody left their 5-year-old home for any length of time. I think my older brother was supposed to be paying attention. You can never leave children unattended in a car. If you see that out and about, that's a call we want. Outside temperatures can be really not that hot and the temperature in the car gets to the point where kids can die. So that's something we look at. And then there's a list of things we assess about unsupervised at home. And then it kind of gives you just a little spiel about the dilemmas in intervening. And it is hard because you can't see neglect always. Failure to thrive you can see. That's on page 9. It gives you a real kind of an outline of how the assessment happens. That has to be a diagnosis that happens by a medical provider. Erika can't look at a kiddo and go, oh my gosh, that's failure to thrive. So when they start hitting a certain low percentile on those growth and development charts, when they're going in for their well child checks, or they're going into WIC to be weighed, or whatever it is that's laying eyes on those little tinies, and they start falling too low, they'll start doing that assessment process early on to find out, is this organic, like there's something medically wrong with this child, or is it non-organic? What is it the mom or dad are doing or not doing that's causing them to be so small? So maybe you have a parent who doesn't understand how to mix formula. You know, I was really good and follow it when it was a 4-ounce bottle, and I knew it was 1 scoop and, you know, whatever, 4 ounces of water, or 2 scoops and 4 ounces of water. I didn't think about that I had to double that now when I'm making an 8-ounce bottle. Do you know what I mean? Like, you got to assess their ability to understand the directions. That's the first thing we look at. Can you actually feed them the appropriate amount of nutrition, or is it poverty? I ran out of formula. I have this much left. My WIC checks aren't going to be ready until, you know, a few days from now, so I'm going to water it down a little bit. Not really understanding the impact. And over a period of time, kids can start losing weight. The other things that medical causes they go over, you have to do an assessment. Like I said, that's a medical diagnosis. And we're assessing the parent's ability to understand what they were doing wrong, for lack of a better way, what omission they were doing that was causing that, and then finding out, can they correct it.
Did you build this?
Huh. I stole it right out of California. It's the curriculum we use to train new CPS workers.
I have a question on
Okay.
page 10,
Okay.
recognition, and down where it says low, infant with low birth rate, I'm assuming it meant low birth weight?
I'm betting
Yes.
it is supposed to be that, but I will fix it so it doesn't say that the next time. Maybe, if I can figure out where I sat on my pins. Which one? How far down?
Third from the
Third from the
bottom.
bottom of recognition, secondary.
There you go. Low
You're
birth
really
weight, prolonged
good at finding
hospitalization.
that stuff.
Oh, look at you, Mr. Editor. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for that, because I can't tell you how many times I've read this and I never picked up on that. My brain skips right over that. Yeah, we'll fix that.
Really, failure to thrive is quite rare. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite rare. And as we go into the psychological abuse on the next, there's certainly, I mean, as I'm reading through these, there's certainly been incidences where, you know, one of the kids was scapegoated than the other 3, or, you know, I have to tell you the biological pieces of things when we talk about, and I don't want to generalize this, but we do see more non-biological caretakers abusing or neglecting kids, and kids that there's an older child from another father and a younger child from the one father. The baby will be well cared for, and then the 2-year-old is definitely the scapegoat. Or, and so these things happen. They certainly do, and what we kind of refer to it to as like a bizarre behavior towards a kid, because, I mean, it's quite odd to see a parent calling their kid, you know, any kind of like really derogatory names, or, you know, it's rare, but it happens,
And that causes that psychological abuse or neglect issue. This is impairing their ability to function. It's impacting them emotionally and psychologically. It's difficult to prove. Like I said, you have to have a mental health provider who's willing to say that this action from this person is clearly causing this issue with this child. So that's tough for CPS workers because it's difficult.
having
But
a
those are all the
provider
things that
continuous.
would be looked at, all of that stuff. The unpredictability, the unrealistic expectations. And I'm just gonna say it again, it's my spiel with all my workers too. The highest predictor of a child being abused is that their parent has unrealistic developmental expectations of them. Because if they have unrealistic developmental expectations, they're gonna expect them to be able to do things they can't do. So, at 3, go clean your room. And now I come in your room and you're playing in your toys. I told you to clean your room. Spank, 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 right? That is not realistic to expect that a 3-year-old can do that by themselves. Kiddos who are precocious and very verbal at a young age are set up almost too for an unrealistic expectation, because just that they have high verbal skills doesn't mean that they have you know, developmental cognitive ability that an older child has. So that is an issue. We do a lot of education around child development and providing information to parents about what is reasonable to expect this age child to do, okay? We talked about physical abuse, and now you have a handout here on abusive head trauma, also known as shaken baby syndrome. We included it just because you're gonna have children on your caseload who have been injured and are in our care because of a situation where they have an abusive head trauma.
So this pamphlet, what happens next, is this what you give out to your parents?
Every time that a social worker a child protection specialist makes contact with somebody for the first
Okay.
time, they are
Ideally.
supposed to give that to
That's
them.
kind of what it looked like.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's their information source about our system and how it operates. Now, while it's far more information than the majority of the referrals would warrant, because we're not gonna remove all these children, please, we're not removing all these children, they need to know. It's full disclosure.
Okay.
They have the right to know what the possibilities are. And so social workers, child protection specialists, are supposed to give those to every parent the first time that they talk with them. And they are supposed to give it, if not then, anytime you give a parent the notification saying I'm removing your child and legally they're coming into our care, they have to have that.
Okay.
I mean, they have to give it all the time, but it's everyone in Montana does it different. Now that we're training, I'm saying yes, you give it out every time. There's grant money that pays for those. It's not coming out of the budget of the division. So there's that booklet, and there's another one that's called the Montana School Guidelines. Really good information in that about mandatory reporting, and it's geared towards the education system so that they understand what their roles and responsibilities are, and so teachers understand kind of the limitations social workers, child protection specialists have about not sharing information. Because if I am a teacher and I call in a referral, I'm kind of mad when no one calls me back,
Because
and
you
maybe
wanna know,
or I think they're
or-
not doing anything, but
Right.
really the family has the right to confidentiality, and while you can tell me stuff, I can't explain to you what's going on without mom signing a release, and that's something that's really hard for staff of daycares, schools, everyone to understand.
Also a piece that we run into issues, so I'm sure once you guys are actually engaged in a case, is the tit for tats on the other parents. Like, well, is Johnny doing their treatment plan? Because I'm going to one-up them. Well, I mean, and what in my world is incredibly frustrating is when I'm solely working with one parent and I can't tell the other parent that there's a safety plan in place, or that Johnny can't be around his dad's girlfriend while he's over there because dad's girlfriend I can't tell mom that. I can't share any of that with mom. And so it's and I mean, if you ask me, that's, I mean, a right to raise a child is huge, and do it effectively. Also with schools, we're not to call the principal and say, hey, we pulled Johnny from his family this week, so you're probably going to see some behaviors, and he may be moving school. You know, I mean, it's
if you
really
pull that kid, yes, you can. You have legal authority to share that information with whomever needs to know it. You're in the middle of an investigation.
And I guess that I'm thinking more about pulling from one parent to go to another parent. That's, I mean, once we take the legal custody, it opens a lot of doors because we do have the legal ability at that point. But when we're still working with a family outside of a filing process, then it's really hard to not share information in the best interest of the child, and you can't. So
that comes back to Montana having those strongest rights to privacy.
But by the time we're involved, if we're talking to people, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, have to
That's what I was
explain why we're
wondering.
talking to them, right?
If we go in
Yeah.
and talk to teachers,
And, you know,
what
you
can
have
we share?
You have legal authority that the courts provide you that I'm sure Bill either has or will be talking with you about what your roles are.
Yeah.
We can only speak to what is child abuse and neglect, and what brings us to, you know, the table to when you have a case, what went on behind the scenes before you got it. I just think it's helpful for you to understand.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
and I just want to hit really quick because I know we're running out of
We're
time.
over.
Oh, we are?
Yes.
We're 7:15.
7:15.
Oh crap.
That's
Okay.
what she gets for not looking.
Well, I didn't
The
even
agenda.
know.
Go ahead.
Hey, it doesn't matter. I'm
Do you
always
see
late.
those cool
I
sheets
know.
they emailed to us? It says
No.
right on there.
Hey, I've had affidavits. No, I'm just kidding. I think that it gets really frustrating working with us as social workers, and I guess that I just want to say that I personally incredibly value the work that you guys do. When you asked about do we get information from, I don't remember at what point, and then it was diverted to Bill and you were going to save the question. I guess I need to say that in my opinion, when you guys are appointed for the child. And if it's the day before court and you're going to call me and ask me for an update, I'm going to tell you where I stand on things, but that's not in the best interest of the kid because my job is to protect the kid. And so I have to take a very, well, I know, but I think that we need to look at the team, and I think that there needs to be a recognition of the fact that you guys are the court-appointed advocate for the kids. I sometimes, as the social worker, will make a choice that you don't agree with. And it's not because I don't value your opinion, and it's not because everybody's opinion isn't important. It sometimes is regulated by our policy and procedure, and frankly, I'd rather do it differently as well. But I think it's important to really value the pieces of the team and agree to disagree sometimes, because we're not all gonna, and we can all be wrong and we can all be right. You know, it's. But I just think it's important to just bounce everything off the
To know
team.
that it might be adversarial sometimes.
Well,
what
and it
your
will.
thought is versus what the social worker or the CPS
It
worker
is.
thinks versus what the attorneys think versus, I mean, that's just the process.
And what's
We don't
ideal
have to
and what's
agree, right?
realistic.
We just each give our own
Exactly.
opinion.
You're doing your own independent
Right.
information
Okay.
gathering.
I won't get mad at you.
Well, and you know, I mean, I can tell you email is far better for me. I can tell you that when I get 29 phone calls and I'm ready to call somebody back, it's not going to be the CASA, and I apologize, but you are not in danger. So, I mean, you're not the one that I'm worried about. Oh my God, you know.
Bill
So,
already told us that.
well, but it gets frustrating sometimes.
It's hard to hear it.
I can completely appreciate it, but I can tell you for my end of it, the nice squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I will call you if you keep calling me. No, but I just, it's
Email
not
her.
because I don't care. It's and all of us obviously are there because we care, but sometimes we don't get back to it very quickly. So that's it.
Hey, thank you guys.
Don't you have your break? Thank you guys for being willing to do this. We really mean that.
I know, because we're running out at this. No, I'm just kidding.
Erica's working too hard is what she's telling me.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
So are you guys done? Or you guys keep going?
What's that?
You guys keep going?
They have another.
Yeah,
scale.
we've got.
Oh,
yeah,
that's-
Mike.
Oh, good. I was
Let's take 5.
They're not, they're just actual CPS people, like in the field, going into the home. And then but that gal, like, is probably.
She actually goes out.
I need to turn my recorder off here.
I was talking to a friend of
It's